The only way that we can start making changes is through making mistakes. And when you start doing the right turn at the right part, surfing becomes easy and your surfing starts to flow. So the top is where I access speed. The bottom is where I access that power. The closer you can join speed and power together, right, the more your surfing is going to flow. Most people do not know where they are on a wave, and they only have eyes for the end of the wave.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. We got Clayton from Ombe Surf. I'm super excited. He's a shaper, he's a coach. He runs surf retreats, has a facility where they do live training and online courses, a ton of stuff, a wealth of knowledge. Very excited to have him here. Thanks for joining, Clayton.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, lovely to be here and excited to get into this.
Let's hear a little bit about kind of your where you got it all started, and kind of we'll go through your background, and then I think a lot of these conversation topics are naturally going to flow from it. But why don't we start kind of from the early days? You know, what was one of your most favorable memories from, you know, when you first started surfing?
So I had a bit of an awkward childhood where I was a diabetic. So I kind of felt, well, I used to go to school and I'd have to get my vial of insulin out and I'd have a needle and I'd be drawing it out and then I'd inject myself and then I could eat my lunch. So all the kids in the class like, look at this kid. And then around about the same age, around about like teenage years, like all the kids are starting to hook up and go to parties and smoke and drink. And I couldn't because I wanted to be healthy. And in my mind back then, it's like, you got diabetes, you're going to get gangrene, your leg's going to get chopped off and you're going to die. That was like shit. So I've got this very short time span. I need to surf as much as I can before I die. And that was like, that's it. So every chance I could, I hit the beach. And when I hit the water, it was like, now this is my domain. You're in my area. So like those cool kids, when they came surfing, they were not cool in the water. But like I understood it. I could move in it. So I felt so comfortable in the ocean, but so awkward out of it. Struggled to hook up with chicks. Just didn't know how to talk to them. So didn't know how to speak to people.
Yeah.
But then I understood boards really well, understood waves really well. And then it kind of naturally progressed after my professional surfing career, which didn't pan out very good, that I got into board shaping. And then I had to talk to customers because I had to figure out what kind of board they want. But the most important thing I had to try to figure out was who was lying to me about their technique and their style. Because often people wanted you to make them a better board to make them a better surfer. But what they don't understand is that a better board just responds quicker. So if you got bad technique, it responds quicker to your bad technique. So then those people would come back and go, oh, this board's horrible. It catches rail, it nose dives, it does this, it does that. So I had to try to figure out who's lying about their technique to try to get the better board. And then generally the people that were lying about their technique, I would have to dumb their board down. I'd make it a little bit less, or make it more wider so it's less responsive. A little bit thicker so it paddles better. A little bit longer so you can catch waves easier. So there's all these ways in which you have to kind of get to understand what people are saying to you. So I had to, from being socially awkward, start learning how to extract information out of people and then also explain to them how waves work, how boards work. And this is what got me into coaching, is trying to understand my customer.
Interesting. That's a very, wow. So circling from the beginning of that was, when did you start shaping exactly?
So look, my parents were never super wealthy. So they gave me everything they could. Probably I was about 17 when I left home, moved to the city. I moved in with a guy that was a shaper. His name was Baron. And I always hung out at his factory and I'd watch him shape. So it was kind of like a natural progression. I wanted to try it. So I got some reject blanks. I'd shape them, surf them. They'd go terrible. But then I'd always compare them to how his boards went. Mm-hmm. And then I'd go back and hey, Baron, what is wrong with one? It feels like this. And you'd look at it and take a pencil and go X, 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 X. And only when he put these X's, I could see them. So it's kind of like before you have this awareness, once he shows you, it jumps out at you. So then what you try and do is when you shape the board, you just try and make less mistakes. So you try to get rid of the X's.
Yeah.
And the boards progressively go better and better and better. So it was really cool to have that. And then to try to make the board that went as good as his was a challenge to me.
Right.
And then again, when you're shaping, you learn how to focus your thoughts because you're so in the moment. And it's like surfing. You need to be present, because if you're not present, you're going to get caught by a set, or you're not going to be sitting in the right place when the set comes. So it's very much an exercise of being in the moment. Shaping is like a meditation of being in the moment. And what I did like about surfing as a kid was that it rooted me to in the moment, because I knew that I didn't have much future. So don't look towards that. Like, make this moment count. Then I suppose now that I'm in my 50s and I'm trying to teach other people how to surf, I'm trying to teach them to be present in the moment. All the trauma that's happened in the past, that's the past. Your fear of the future, you're not there yet, but in the moment, deal what you can deal with. And generally, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. And if you just focus on the right technique, it's like a spice. You don't need a lot of good technique. You just need a little bit, and it'll get you to where you need to go.
Yeah, very true. It's so hard to be present when you're surfing, because the problem with trauma and the emotion is it just lingers with you, right? You blow a wave that that was like the wave of the day, and that thing just sticks with you. So the next wave comes along, it's so hard to get that thing out of your head.
So if you've ever watched some of the Andrew Huberman podcasts, so he was talking about the central nervous system and neuroplasticity. So when we're teenagers up until about 23, we've got lots of neuroplasticity. So what's happening? Our central nervous system is trying to set us up for our life.
Yeah.
Okay. So up until 23, we're developing our central nervous system for what our likes are and the things that we enjoy doing, whether it's hunting, fishing, whatever that may be. Now, suddenly at the end of 23, that starts to slow down and turn off. The only way that we can get neuroplasticity back, and the only way that we can start making changes, is through making mistakes. Because if you do something again and again and again, and it's wrong and it's wrong and it's wrong, you're going to get frustrated. So what's happening is the mind starts to build up this chemical inside of frustration. That chemical is the right cocktail for neuroplasticity to start waking up again. And through the frustration, we start recognizing certain patterns, good ones, bad ones. So it's almost mistakes are a way for us to help us realign ourselves so that when we find what's right, we can start doing it. So when you say, when we're surfing and we get it wrong, as surfers, we go, oh, okay, we've got it wrong. Oh, if I just get it right, I might feel better. By the second or third time, we're claiming it as a bad day. But what we need to do is persevere. It's that frustration is a doorway that we need to go through. And it's not like you run through the doorway. You like wade through it like it's mud. And it's crap, and it's terrible, but then you start seeing glimmer of hope, okay? And as soon as you're through that doorway, things get easier, they don't get harder, right? And it's about getting out of your comfort zone.
That's so true.
And as soon as you get out of your comfort zone, your learning stops. That neuroplasticity settles down again. And then you need a new challenge, whether it's surfing hollower waves, bigger waves, faster waves, slower waves, weaker waves, waves that you're not excited to surf. Like that could be a challenge in itself. And again, if you go surf crap waves that you're not excited, you're going to get frustrated. You need how to get lighter on your feet, change your equipment, change the line you take. So go through the whole learning curve, create neuroplasticity, where you get frustrated, start looking at pattern recognition, eat healthy, sleep better, boom, boom, tons of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting that you mentioned, how these things get ingrained into your brain, and how mistakes, unless you make mistakes, they become really ingrained. And I feel like with a lot of surfing, that is kind of what you need to do, right? You need to make these mistakes. You need to push yourself. I find, a lot of what surfing is as well, though, is you actually ingrain habits that you don't even realize are wrong, and then you have to undo those, and you don't even realize they're mistakes, And I think, and it's interesting because surfing in so many ways, the things that you do when you're a beginner are right for that level, but then you actually have to do the counterintuitive thing the more advanced you get, right? So it's this retraining of the brain and this continuum that goes in this opposite direction, and it's really interesting.
I, what you said there just resonated and just like it's not an alarm bell. It's like, yes, you're saying the right thing. Like in my head, that was fantastic. So I've, it sounds a bit arrogant, me, but I don't want to use the word I, but there are 4 levels. Okay. You got your beginner stage, low intermediate, high intermediate, and then advanced. And what we can break this down into is, have you heard of freeze, flight, and fight? Okay?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
a beginner, when they stand up on the board, they just want to balance and they're almost frozen and they're getting bombarded with a lot of information. They don't know where to focus. They don't know what to do. So they're just stuck, right? But then if they looked across the shoulder, they can see someone trimming. So they want to get there. So then they feel like they've got to rush to get there. So they go from freeze to flight. They're just trying to get to the shoulder where they feel comfortable and safe. Then through surfing a fair bit, they will rush out onto the shoulder. They'll start racing into the flats. Then they're like, hang on, I'm going to go back. So then they've got to force the board to turn and bounce their way back to the foam. So now suddenly they've gone from flight to fight, where they have to force the board to turn and fight the way back to the foam ball or the pocket. The next phase on top of that would be flow. Whereas instead of rushing out into the shoulder and trying to do a turnaround part of the wave, you start to surf the wave in the pocket. Where water goes up, you go up. Where water throws down, you go down. And when you start doing the right turn at the right part, surfing becomes easy and your surfing starts to flow. So the first couple decisions are all fear-based decisions, where it's all about you internal and how I feel. When you reach flow state, it's all about external and the line that you take and how do I make the best decisions whereby I can optimize this wave using all the energy and all the surface area on the wave and where I can use it to its maximum potential.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think it applies even before you've caught the wave, just like where people position themselves on the wave, you know? As a beginner, you position yourself, well, in the beginning, you don't even know where the heck to position yourself. So you're probably taking off in the white water and you're way too deep. And then you get to a certain level, but you know you want to get on the green part of the wave, but you're like way out there on the shoulder. And then as you get better, you try to get closer to the pocket. And then as you get advanced, you're come from behind the peak, you know, which is totally retraining your brain in terms of like how to approach it. Because before you're in the same position you were when you were an absolute beginner. You're taking off behind the peak in the whitewater as you are now that you're an advanced surfer, but you're doing a completely different thing, you know, and you kind of have to go through that continuum. And it must be, and I would imagine I know it's very hard to like retrain your brain to go through that entire process, right?
So let's break this down to something really, really simple, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. Who taught you how to walk, man?
My parents.
No, they couldn't even communicate with you. You didn't understand words. You had no vocabulary.
Sure,
You
yeah.
taught yourself how to walk, okay? And all it was is you had good examples and you had motivation. So mum was putting your hands out, so you looked where you wanted to go, and to get to mum, you almost fell forwards, okay? But before you could even walk, you had to learn how to balance, okay? So when you learn how to surf, the first thing you do is you learn how to balance, but then you don't get any speed. So the next step would be the walk, where you actually got to lean forward, weight over the front foot. Now you can start trimming and get speed, right? Now, if you're riding a bicycle, your first pedal, you lean forward, you pedal, you get your speed. As you get speed, the bicycle stabilizes, okay? So beginners need to look for speed. They mustn't look for balance. When they get speed, they'll find balance, okay? Then once you're trimming, the next thing you want to do is you pretty much want to learn how to turn. On a bicycle, that's lean to the left, you'll turn left. Lean to the right, you'll turn right. So your rail's round, your board will start rolling. Okay, so that's the next phase, learn how to turn. Then the phase after that would be learn how to go down and up, turn. So basically you're starting to kind of put all those levels together. And it's the same phase as when you're a kid. You first learn to good posture, you balanced, then you fell forward, then you can start running, you can jump, somersault, you can do all those other add-on things. So surfing's no different. So you did mention a question, well, how do we read waves and so on? So if I did ask you the question, how do you read a wave? What's your opinion on that? How do you read waves?
The way to read waves, I mean, essentially my philosophy on it is you're building this kind of massive memory bank of all the waves that you've caught. And it's pattern recognition, right? And
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so it's pattern recognition, and what's happening is you're
So, can I
developing
just-
this memory bank. You're beginning to recognize patterns, and you're trying to determine like what is good and what is bad. And the success you have with it is going to be determined by, how you perform on the wave. So for example, it's like, all right, let's start super simple, right? Let's talk about just reading the wave in terms of catching it. Like you're paddling for a wave, you're looking down the line, and then you get used to seeing some kind of shape. And then you begin to imprint. And then let's say you don't even have any idea about what is going to be good or bad. You just paddle for a bunch of waves. And then you realize, hey, when I paddle for this wave and it looks this way, and then I actually make it down the line, you're like, okay, I'm going to take a snapshot of that image, and I'm going to use that as my kind of, this is going to be the blueprint that I'm looking for in the future. And then essentially you use that. And then what happens over time, though, is you refine that blueprint. You get a much clearer view of what that blueprint is. You begin to expand on your database of like what potentially, is going to be a good blueprint. And then you begin to adjust it based on your skill level as well. Like we were talking about, as a beginner, you're probably looking for like a very soft wave. But then the more advanced you get, the more hollow the wave becomes, the deeper you're taking off. And, your positioning on it, how steep it can be, all these things are going to have to get calibrated based on your ability level, and also that memory bank, which you're continually adding to. So that's essentially how I think about, reading waves. Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.
So after that explanation that you gave, I'll give mine afterwards, but tell me what speed, power, and flow means to you.
Speed, power, and flow.
Or to your audience, or like, what do people know about speed, power, and flow? Because in the judging criteria, especially on the WSL, I know Pipeline's running at the moment, but like going to J-Bag, Trestles, they're going, oh, look at that, the guy's surfing with speed, power, and flow. He's ticking all these boxes. So what is speed, power, and flow?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I haven't actually looked at the WSL criteria. I should know this from heart, but I don't. I mean, speed, that's the way I'd measure that. Is just like simple velocity on the wave, right? That the rider would either generate themselves or via the wave. And then power, it's interesting because that relationship between speed and power are so interrelated. So assuming that we're making them separate criteria, it almost feels like power is the way you're harnessing that speed. I mean, I think about a turn, right? So let's say you're going into this bottom turn or you're going into this top turn and you have a ton of speed. Now you can fully utilize that speed properly. Let's say you look at John Florence doing just this, those crazy cars where he's like cutting half of Margaret River off, just shearing the wave face. Like he's utilizing all that speed and he's harnessing it in the turn and creating a huge amount of power and torque force. And that's why he's throwing so much spray. He's changing, I think you kind of get what I'm saying, right? Yeah. And then the flow element is just that uninterrupted line where, you're not doing the double pumps, the double pump bottom turns. So that line, that speed and that power just flows in a continuous, beautiful line. That's the way I would think about it.
And so from now my coaching brain and my shaping brain, I'll tell you how I look at speed, power, and flow. So when a wave breaks, the water travels as a circle, and if you're just sitting in the ocean and the swell went under you, it would pick you up and it would put you down. So basically the energy transference is an up-down transference. Okay. Then when the wave breaks, it draws water off the bottom and it throws water off the top. Okay. At the base, where it draws water up, it's the most thickest. So it draws up slower. And then as it starts leaving water behind, it starts going faster and faster and faster. Okay?
Yeah.
To the tipping point where it throws down. So that base where it draws up, that's power, because that's how you can articulate whether this is a powerful wave that's going to be hollow or whether this is going to be a slow wave. So by reading the bottom and reading the wave's power, you can anticipate what the top's going to do.
Right.
Now, what the pros do, like Mick Fanning, John, and all that, they can look at the bottom and they can go down there, and then they can almost feel through a bottom turn what that bottom's going to do.
Yeah.
Okay? Because your feeling kind of gets your body to move so much quicker than your eyes to the brain anticipate, react.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then what happens is water draws off the top. They go to the top of the wave, and then it throws, and they get speed on the way down.
Right.
Okay? The closer you can join speed and power together, right, the more your surfing is going to flow. Because bear in mind, the energy transference is up-down. So the more you go to the shoulder, put it this way, if I threw this pen up, gravity would bring it down. So if I do a turn and I go up, the wave will want to push me back down again. But if I go out into the shoulder, there's nothing that suggests that I should go down or come back to the foam, which makes it really then hard to turn. So the more I surf with speed and power, which is now the wave, the bottom and the top, okay, and the tighter I can turn and the longer I can hold those turns for between speed and power, the more I'm going to flow. Okay, so nothing in that explanation was about me as the surfer. It was all about the wave. So everything is external and everything is pattern recognition. Where's the bottom? How is it drawing up? Where's the top? How is it throwing? The problem is most people, when they think about speed, power, and flow, they all go internal. I got to stand up and I got to haul ass down the line. So they're just kind of, racing like they're riding surf skates on the street, and they're just wiggling mid-face down the line. So because they're mid-face, they only tap into half the speed. They tap into half the power, and they've got half the feeling of what it feels like to surf that wave. Then their bodies are making up the deficit. And then surfing just looks disgusting. It's ugly. They're in fight mode. They're not flowing. They push hard on a turn. The board stops. And all these bad habits starts to creep into the surfing. Whereas if you look at, say, Ethan Ewing, John, Toledo, because they're dropping in, they've got more time. So their surfing looks effortless. When they bottom turn, the wave's drawing up. They're getting lifted up with it. So the bottom turn looks more effortless. When they hold the rail turn, it looks like they're throwing more spray because they're turning longer and the board's on rail. So the illusion of power is so great that a person surfing flat thinks, "Jeez, I got to go to gym and push so much harder on my back foot to throw the same amount of spray as John Florence." But the difference is the person surfing mid-face surfs flat, John surfs on rail. So because the board's on rail, it displaces way much more water. But you can only do this surfing in the pocket. So if we just kind of like put that into a nice little bag, professional surfers surf top to bottom, and their idea of speed, power, and flow is all about the wave. Intermediate surfers surf mid-face and on the shoulder, and they think, I have to move my body faster, I got to push the board harder, and then to flow, I got to make jump and bounce and hop to try to connect all these things. So the perception of it, in terms of the way they think about surfing, they're like polar opposites. So we got to stop these guys thinking about themselves. It's not about you, mate. It's all about the wave. That's surfing. You cannot surf without the wave. So when they change that and it's all about the wave, suddenly they can start to connect with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you asked me what my view of speed, power, flow, I was thinking more like WSL criteria, whereas you were defining it more in terms of like from a specific perspective, which I think is extremely useful to surfers. Although it's interesting, I would say though that you can't, because you characterize the way I explained it as being this very internal focused perspective, whereas yours was more this external wave focused perspective. And I kind of think that, well, it's probably just yin and yang, and people just, they're the two flip sides of the same coin. But my view is that in order to really have that speed and power, there is still a ton of like internal input that's required in order to harness that. To do a proper bottom turn requires, it requires a lot of rider input. When I'm going into my bottom turn, in order to properly load up and go top to bottom, I'm holding that thing pretty hard, and it's a lot of strain on my legs, And so,
do you want to jump into that quickly?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Right. So if you take off and you go straight down the wave, you're going to get a lot of speed. Okay,
Yeah.
so if we bring it into riding a bicycle, if you're going slow on a bicycle, you won't lean. You'll twist the handlebars. But if you're going fast, you'll start leaning and the tire's round, it'll roll. The simple fact that your head's over the bicycle, you'll turn in that direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you take off on a board, as you start getting speed, it's going to be harder for you to put your rail in because of how much water is passing under the board. Okay.
For sure. Yeah.
So the earlier you do your bottom turn, right, the easier it is for you to do your bottom turn. The later you do your bottom turn, the harder it is to do your bottom turn. So if you watch Mick Fanning, he takes off, and as he stands up, his head's over the rail, and he's almost touching water. Okay, which means he's turning for longer, which means he's finding it easier to turn. But someone who turns late, they're going to have to try to force that rail into the water. And then generally, the later it is, you're then fighting your board to put on rail. You're fighting all the water to put it on rail, and you're having to push really, really hard. So
are you saying though that you're not, it doesn't require, strong leg muscles to do a strong bottom turn, or?
No, it requires you to get your head over the rail. And the earlier you do it, the easier it is. The later you do it, the harder it is.
Right.
Okay, so thinking about this, we're in water, so we want to flow like water, okay? If there's tension and if there's stiffness and rigidity, it's like we're frozen. So we're not going to move well in water. And if we're moving too much and we're floppy and all over the place, it's like we're gas molecules, all right? So we're not going to move well in water. We need to be slow and smooth because slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And that's how we do a bottom turn. And if you watch all the best surfers, their surfing looks effortless. So effortless means that they're moving like water inside of water. So if you watch Marky February, Torren Martin, all of those guys, they're leaning over that rail. They're getting a little bit lower down, and they're just turning earlier. So their pattern recognition of what's coming up, they're so ahead of everyone else. Everyone's like, I'm at the bottom. It's like an afterthought, bottom turn. And they're probably employing the wrong technique at the wrong time if it's an afterthought. Whereas the earlier you can see these patterns and the better you can read the wave, the better lines that you're going to take, the earlier you go into your turns, the better your equipment's responding. Then you're getting more time, you're creating more space, and then you're deeper in the moment, which you're starting to articulate all of these movements really, really well.
Yeah, for sure. No, I agree with all that. I was just trying to say, I think it's really a combination though of the rider and their input and the wave, and the ultimate marriage is going to be the application of perfect technique with marrying that perfect technique with doing it on the right place on the wave so you can fully utilize the wave's power, right? Because I think that there's going to be that power comes from two places. It does come from both the rider and the wave. Obviously, the wave is going to provide the biggest, the maximum power, right? But improper rider input is going to really inhibit the full expression, right? That's all I was saying, yeah.
I agree with you 100%. So let's flip that. Let's just say the wave's small and there's not a lot of push. You can't lean. So then you have to almost stand on top of your board because you're not going fast enough.
Yeah.
Now you're going to have to twist off the bottom turn and try to get your fin to displace water to give you some kind of drive. So generally, we all started surfing small waves, foamies, surfing flat. So the first way that we started to learn how to interact, especially if the board is big, was to probably lean back, lift the nose up and turn. Then as we went a bit faster on a smaller wave, we started to twist, okay? The natural progression then is as we get bigger waves, is that we start to lean. So we want to use less of our bodies and more of the wave. And we want to learn how to surf smart. Some people never progress from the back foot placement. Then some people never progress out of the small wave twisting. And then very few people get it to surf on rail. So I'm a big advocate of telling people to learn how to surf a twin fin because it's going to get you from the twisting, which will make the 20 slide out, to putting it on rail. And then if you surf on rail, you're using your board to its full potential, because snowboarders snowboard on rail, wakeboarders wakeboard on rail. Surfers learn how to surf flat, and then the rocker slows you down. But when you're on rail, there's less friction. Your board turns. Then you can start hitting speed and power, and you can start doing figure eights. And that type of surfing, you get to maximize the wave space or the wave usage. You get to maximize the wave energy, and you get to do more turns on a short space of time. So the feeling that you get out of a wave is like just milking all of that energy. It's like wringing a towel out and just squeezing every single drop of energy.
Yeah.
And when you kick out of that wave, you're just like, oh, that was amazing. Like, where's the next one?
Yeah.
And then the wave infuses you with energy where you're on a high all day long.
You know, that's so funny. I was literally thinking this earlier this morning, okay, because I'm on a decent length surf trip, and I brought my two normal boards. One is, both basically thruster quads, your normal short boards, right? One is a little bit for bigger waves. One's like a step down, it's a rocket wide, and the other one's a 70 Inferno 72. And then I also just randomly brought, because I've been interviewing a bunch of people who ride twin fins and are be like, you got to ride a twin fin and try it. And I've had a twin fin before, but I never like properly gave it a shot. Cause I ended up going to Hawaii, and then I was like, the waves are going to be crazy there. So I had to put in a little, I was like, I got to put in a little nub. So I put a little stabilizer into that thing, and it's hard for me to go back. You know what I'm saying? But this time I was like, I'm going to be surfing mostly like very reasonable waves. And my buddy has shaped this ASIM twin. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to take it. Let's see what everybody's talking about. And the thing is mental, out of control fast. I swear I did one of the sickest turns on it. But there are other moments where I'm like, just what the heck is going on, because like, I'll just like, it'll feel unstable and whatnot. But I had this thought. I was like, this is probably going to improve my surfing in a way, because, I was like, maybe it's almost worth, because it's so hard going from a dependable like thruster, quad setup. Maybe it's almost worth that like initial, hangover when you, or first, not hangover is the wrong word, but that initial period when you're just getting kind of used to it, because then it would force you to surf better, and you would just naturally have that speed, so it's interesting.
I've heard of the S-curve before.
In what context? Like just an S-curve, or?
So, look, Grant, you know how to drive a car, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
If you jumped into my car, you might not know where the key goes, and the indicators might be on the wrong side, and the clutch might be slightly different. So it's not that you can't drive, you don't know how to drive. It's just that mine is different. So there's going to be this little negative S-curve where you're like, oh shit,
right.
The wipers are on, and it's the other side. It's like these damn German cars, So what happens when you jump onto a board? You got to figure it out. So there's this little negative period where you have to learn these things, okay? And some people, that negative period is taking you out of your comfort zone. You feel that you're not surfing as good as you used to. And then that negative period is going to be accompanied with a bit of frustration. And if you aren't willing to wade through that frustration, because on the other side of it is something beautiful, you got to learn how to ride a twin fin on rail going 100 miles an hour. And it is big smile on the face. It's that, it's that good.
Right.
But unless you're willing to suck and go down before you go up, you're always just going to stay in your comfort zone. And that's always just going to be out of your reach.
Yeah, I think I'm willing to bite the bullet just with that board, obviously. I think the question that I have in my mind, though, is the switching back and forth between the different boards. Because this thing has a relatively wide tail, So when the waves start, it was a small day, so that's why I wrote it. But like when the waves start being good again, I'm going to jump back on my, normal, my 18 3/4 short board. And from a, that's... Yeah.
It's looking to gear. So basically, if you're riding small waves, the twin's got a wide tail. So any lift in the wave, you're going to get pushed. Then it's got a slightly flatter rocker. So the smallest little bit of inclination and swell, the rocker will push you forward. It's really wide. So even if you hit a flat section, it will play through the flat sections. Okay.
For sure.
So all of that's about generate speed and have balance. And then I'm sure the rails are a bit more fuller so that even while you're on rail, the rail will want to pop out so that it won't sink. It'll actually give you squirt, give you drive. So all of that, those aspects that make that really great in small waves are going to make it really bad in good waves.
I know. So that my concern, exactly. So my concern is when I switch boards, when I switch from the twin to my normal, my normal shortboard, it's just going to be a totally different feel. And is it going to, I'm sure if I get really good, if I spend a lot of time on both, I can switch between the two of them and not have problems. But right now, I feel like if I'm switching back and forth between the two of them a bunch, it's going to mess up my normal, my normal approach. And I think, because for example, like when I'm doing a bottom turn on my normal shortboards, like I don't have to think twice about like going into a deep bottom turn. Whereas with this thing, I have to really think about, potentially sliding out when I'm going into my bottom turn, So it's like whether that is going to then transfer back onto riding my shortboard. That's the main thing I'm worried about there.
Look, what you're telling me is that when you drive in your car, you understand your turning circle. And then if you had to drive my van, which is slightly bigger, it's going to take a slightly wider rock and a wider turning circle. Okay. So you know, if you had to go from my van back to your car, would you be worried that, oh crap, my turning circles, I've got to think about it. 1 or 2 turns you're in.
Yeah.
Okay. But probably the biggest turning circle is realizing, shit, the bus takes a longer, wider turning circle. Now, with your 20, because it's got a flatter rocker, all right, it wants to go more straight than it does turn quick. Because it's got a fuller rail, because it's wider, everything is a wider turning circle. So on your shortboard, let's just say you're doing a figure 8, all you got to do is expand the figure 8 and make the circles bigger on the figure 8. And if you just understand that aspect of it, give it time, don't force it to turn, flow with it, and just try to keep those circles happening. You'll be fine. And then once you understand that, every board that you ride is like, cool, what's this turning circle got for me? And then it's exciting because you want to push it. Whoa, not too much, not enough. And then you find that middle ground. And then what happens, every board that you ride, you can quickly find the middle ground. And then you become a board connoisseur. Or like, oh, this one's this one's that.
Right.
Because pros are just really quick to that. Their technique doesn't change. The lines that they take on the wave changes because of what they're driving.
Right. Yeah. No, that's interesting. I think I'm definitely going to experiment more with it, but I'm also going to be
you got it.
Thoughtful about it. I think I just I just have to figure out the right balance of doing it. So speaking of like these different board designs, I know that you've been experimenting, trying to figure out the perfect board for the wave pool. And so I saw this post that you were doing, and you got like trying to figure out, the difference between, different tail shapes. What have you figured out from your experimentation there?
So the way that urban surf, it's really fun, but it feels more like a surge. It doesn't feel like a circular wave where it draws up and throws down. So it pushes, so you get tons of speed, and then when you bottom turn and you expect there to be this lip, there's kind of like a soft shoulder, and it almost feels like the wave wants to bend away from you. So it's not like you can bank off it. So you get up there, and if you turn too quick, you get stuck. And because it's soft shoulder, it almost feels like a cut back that you got a down calf.
Mm-hmm.
So you got the problem with too much speed in the bottom turn, and then no pushback on the top turn. So it feels like I need a curvy rocker line at the bottom and a flat rocker line on the top. But you can't do that with rockers. So then I'm like, well, can I get something out of maybe a shorter board would make me sit closer to the pocket. Maybe something wider would sustain the flow out of that softer, calm top turn. So I've ridden mid-lengths, twins, quads, thrusters, performance boards. Like I was just like, how's it work? And then finally, I went down the last time and I took a 5.2, a 5.4, and a 5.6. And I love the 5.2 the most. And it just, I could sit real close to it. It's quite short. The rails are quite straight. So when I'm on rail, the water flow goes straight, which gives me squirt. But because it's so short, I can turn it really tight. So for me, that was like a nice sort of combination.
Hmm.
And then because there's no lip where you're pivoting, I opted for a quad rather than a thruster.
Hmm.
So it forced me to kind of almost like a twin to hold that smoothness and to draw my lines out longer. Whereas I found when I rode a thruster, I'd want to push the tail and throw it, but then I'd get hung up because the wave's not pushing me back down again.
Oh, got it. So shorter works better in the wave pool. And then what
For me,
for you,
I'm not
right?
saying that that's the go for someone else, because it has got to do with how
Your
well
ability
do you
level.
surf,
Yeah,
what line are you taking, where's your head at, all that stuff.
for sure. And then weren't you also playing around with the tail shape as well? Or was that a part of the experiment?
Yeah, so I rode a round tail thinking that because a round tail, water follows the outline of the rail. So round would actually make the board feel shorter. And I could turn a lot more tighter and I could get closer to the foam. But then it pivoted and I got hung up. I rode a swallowtail, which has got a straighter outline. And when I bottom turned, it almost projected me onto the shoulder rather than to the lip. And then kind of the swallowtail was like the story of Cinderella and the Three Bears. Like the one was too hot, one was too cold, one was just right. So for me, that the square tail was just right. It had a bit of both. It came off the bottom turn good, and it got me close enough to the pocket where I could do a nice turn.
Interesting. Huh, cool. So you got the perfect board for urban surf. So if anybody's in Australia, you know who to hit up if you need the perfect
Yeah.
board there. That's epic. Okay. And I've also seen you do a lot of interesting stuff where you're actually like shooting footage in the pool. Like tell me about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so most people when they surf, they look at the end of the wave. So the way I've tried to explain surfing is like, all right, you got your phone out and you go, all right, Google Maps. I want to go to a destination. And they see the end of the destination and they almost look at it as a crow flies. And I'm like, no, hang on. There's a bottom turn where there's power and there's a top turn. So if you focus on read the bottom, it will tell you, number one, what's the speed limit? How fast is that wave going? Number two, how steep is it? What type of turn should I be doing? Because if there's no bottom, you probably want to do a cutback. The energy's behind you. If there's a lot of bottom and it's running, the speed limit's fast. There's no bottom, the speed limit's slow. So the best way that I could articulate that is by having this like sort of camera back here. And then I'm like, all right, look at the bottom, what's it telling me? Look at the top. And with the 360 camera, you can almost like look at the foam. When I bottom turn, am I a meter away from the foam? Am I 3 meters away from the foam? You'll be surprised, but most people do not know where they are on a wave, and they only have eyes for the end of the wave. And then here's the kicker. When you ask them, do you remember what you did on the wave, and do you have any recall? And they're like, no, I can't remember the wave.
Right.
And the reason why they can't remember it is that there's nothing to attach that memory to. Whereas if I look at, okay, at the bottom turn, I was going pretty fast. The wave was quite sucky. So I leaned a little bit more and I had to lean a little bit earlier. And then the wave sucked me up with quite a lot of force. Right. Then how was the top turn? I was fairly steep. Okay, you can push the tail up and throw it. Or it was a bit fat. Right. So maybe do a down carve. Or it was really flat. Okay. One more pump out and go for a roundhouse. So I'm one turn in, but I can give you so much feedback on my bottom turn, on the rail, how much leaning, how much squirt the board had, how much projection I got. All right. And that's 5 seconds in. So if you can compare that by simply starting to articulate what I see, then by the time I've run out of wave, I'm like, hello, I'm at my destination. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Paddle back out, do it again.
Totally. I think a lot of beginner surfers is just so much going on in their heads, you know, like they're just
All
looking at this
internal.
wave and there's just so too much to interpret. And you're right, they probably are
Yeah.
focusing way too far down the line, right?
Let's think about
Um,
learning how to drive a car. So key in the ignition, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'm learning how to drive. Check the
yeah,
blind spots. What else do you have to do? Let the clutch out slowly. Don't stall. Hands 11 to 1, whatever it might be. Watch the traffic coming. And it's just like, holy crap, there's a million things I've got to think about. But 2 years down, the music's blaring, arms out the window, like you're having a chat to your girlfriend next to you. And it's like, it's easy because you've relaxed and you kind of know you know what to do. You're just looking at the road. You're not thinking about all these things. So it does go from being internal, and as soon as it goes external, surfing becomes easy.
Yeah. It's interesting. Your approach though is you look only at the bottom of the wave. I'm assuming you're also paying attention to the top of the wave in your periphery. Because when I take off on a wave and I'm going for my bottom turn, I look at the bottom, but a big part of it as well is I'm trying to pay attention to what the section looks like in front of me and how far behind the section I am, you know? And like, well, let's say I take off on a wave, I'm initiating my bottom turn. I'm trying to assess where I am, how far behind the section I am. If I am behind the section, let's assume I'm coming from behind the section, right? I'm looking to assess how far behind the section I am, because then that determines whether, okay, do I need to do another little pump and then go into my bottom turn, or can I go into my bottom turn now? How long do I need to hold my bottom turn so I can come around the section? And then at what angle am I going to be coming up into the section so I can place my turn? So like, I guess when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about it. I'm looking at both the bottom, but also the top. Does that make sense? Or are you suggesting you should just focus on purely the bottom, and then, because that tells you what you need to know about the top, or how would you think about it?
You've done any body surfing?
I have. I mean, you know, when it's 1 foot and there's no surfboard and just whatever. So, yeah.
I'm not talking about just lying down, the foot turns to foam and you just go on the foamy. I'm talking about where you're actually leaning in and you're kind of getting barreled and going inside of the barrel and looking through.
For sure. Yeah, just messing around, yeah.
Great. Okay. What part of the wave are you riding?
You're riding the bottom of the wave.
And what are you
You're
doing?
riding the curl, the pocket. I mean, you're kind of like...
So you're riding the lift.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm trying to do that bodyboarder, he's so amazing at pipe. I think it's been, anyway, a bodyboarder, when they lie down, right, they've got this chin up posture, they're leaning in. What part of the wave are they riding?
Bodyboarder, chin up.
So their chin's quite high. They don't bodyboard flat.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. They're on rail.
Yeah.
They're tapping into the lift.
At pipe. Okay, right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So again, they're tapping into the lift. And bear in mind, these guys have got no fins. All right. So body surfing, zero volume, no fins, but yet you can traverse across a wave by tapping into the bottom power. Bodyboarding, zero fins, a little bit more volume, and you can go across the wave just by leaning in and allowing the wave to lift you up and push you along. Okay. So when I surf, I want to be in the pocket where I'm tapping into that energy, where I'm surfing smarter. It's almost like the equivalent of having to pedal a bicycle versus going downhill. I always want to be going downhill. So I want to be a lazy surfer, and I want my surfing to be effortless. So I can achieve that by reading the bottom and staying in the pocket. Okay. And then from there, once I feel that energy, I can then start reading the top of the wave and started planning. Because from there I can get lift, which means I can get speed. So the top is where I access speed. The bottom is where I access that power. So then I'm going, all right, how can I then tap into speed, power, speed, power, speed, power?
Right. Or I guess my question, and I mean, I agree with you, right? You do want to place your bottom turn in that part of the wave that's drawing up to throw you up into the, to the top of the wave.
Yep.
But you mentioned like what you're looking at and focusing on when you're riding the wave. And you kind of made this clear distinction between looking at the bottom versus the top.
All right, let me explain this differently. I've got my second explanation. Tell me if this has ever happened to you. So you're bottom turning, you're looking at the lip and you're thinking, oh, I'm doing a big turn. And as you project up there, the wave goes, bleh, and you just kind of catch rail and it goes.
Right.
That would
Yeah.
happen to you, surely, yeah? Right.
For sure, yeah.
What about this? You bottom turn, you're going to go up to the lip, but as you go up, the wave just pitches and you get flung over the falls and just blown up. Does that happen to you? Okay, so both times you were looking up and you kind of misread it. Now tell me if this has happened. You're paddling into a wave, you look down and the wave just goes and it's starting to draw up so much water. You pull back and the wave goes brrr, and you're like, whew, lucky I didn't go on that one. So you were able to read the bottom of the wave and anticipate what the top is going to do. But when you ignored the bottom, sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, sometimes you often misread the top. Now, you don't have to steer at the bottom to understand it. You can go to the bottom and you can feel it to understand it. So when I'm body surfing, you can feel it. When you're body boarding, you can feel it. If I surf and put myself in the correct place of the wave where I can feel it, it's kind of like, all right, now I understand it. It's almost like if you want to dance to music, you want to feel the beat. Okay, then I can start jamming. But if you haven't heard the music and you're dancing, you could be out of tune, wrong song. So by me going to the bottom of the wave, it's like, all right, I can feel it. Now I know what to do. Now I know how fast, how slow, when to go up, when to go down. But if I miss that, I'm just like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to feel it. I don't know what's going on. Then I'm out of sync.
Yeah, I think probably what you're trying to say is that a lot of people don't look at the bottom at all, and they're just totally missing it and just not. And that's the critical piece that they're missing when they're trying to read a wave, I think is what you're trying to say.
Most intermediate speed is one speed. So they'll go mid-face.
Yeah.
They won't even bottom turn, and they'll double pump the hell out of it onto the shoulder. So they haven't even connected with that wave. And because they want to get speed, they'll go to a store and buy something that has a wide tail, a flat tail rocker, high volume, wide board, but a short board. So they can rush out onto the shoulder, do a quick pivot, and then bounce back. So that's like a intermediate's dream board, something that accelerates really fast and pivots really quick. But if you try to take that board and then do John's lines where you're doing figure eights, the rock is too flat, the tail's too wide, you're going too fast, you can't do turns. So John's board has got way more curve. He's probably got those pintails that allow him to go way deeper. He can put the board on rail for longer. So if that intermediate rode John's board, it would have too much rock and it would sink. And they go, oh, this is a crap board. What was Parzel thinking? He's an idiot. Meanwhile, it's the line that you're taking. You're not connecting with the wave. You're an idiot. So then Parzel would have to go to John's board, widen the tail, thicken up the rocker, and dump the board down for someone that isn't reading the wave properly because of their fear and anxiety as how they approach a wave.
Yeah, that puzzle of finding the right surfboard is so tricky, exactly for the things that you alluded to, right? It's your ability level, it's the wave, but then it's also things like your body mechanics. I just did an interview with Matt Parker from Album Surfboards, and he's designing a line of surfboards for Coco Ho, and he's like, she has the same weight as Keanu Singh, but her foot size is a lot smaller, and so as a result, her board has to be a lot more narrow, and so then there's going to be people that are too front foot heavy, there's going to be people that are too back foot heavy, and so all these things you're going to have to compensate, so that it's like this never ending puzzle. And so one person's board recommendation might not work for you at all. You could even be like similar level. I mean, not to mention if you're different level surfers surfing different ways, but you could even be surfing the same wave, same ability level, and then the board not work for you just because of like differences in your body mechanics or things that you do. It's crazy.
Then I had Dane Reynolds come to South Africa the one year, and his boards didn't make the flight. So he got there and it's like, dude, could you make me some boards? I don't know where boards are going to arrive. So sat down with him. He had a Simon Anderson with Alberic stickers on that he had liked, and it was beaten up. So obviously he liked the board. It had like huge dents under his front foot. He tried to articulate what he wanted. He said, I don't want a fast board. I want a board that turns. And I was just like, I don't know what he's saying. I don't know what he's asking. I don't know what he's... So in hindsight now, I understand. He was articulating that he wants to do figure eights in the pocket. He doesn't want to take that intermediate line. I had prided myself on taking that intermediate line. And I didn't know how to slow my my fear down, and even how to control my excitement. I just want to get up half a bottom turn and go to the end of the wave. And when I'm going fast and I've got a big smile on my face, try force a turn on a part of the wave that doesn't really allow turns. Dane wants you just big off the bottom turn as far as he can, hold the turns back. So he brought the board back about 2 weeks later. He had snapped like was back in the day, there's even glass on fins. You'd done an air and snapped all the fins out. It's like, yeah, the board is nice, thanks. But it wasn't a keeper.
Yeah.
And then also, I'd get some of Kenny Sater's boards that were left behind from J Bay, and I brought them back to Durban, where I was from in South Africa, and I rode his boards, and I was like, finally, like I'm on a Ferrari, thinking that my boards were like Toyotas or Kias or something like that. So I hopped on this Ferrari, and I took that intermediate line and all the rocker, the borders went there, and I was like, do you know what? These Merricks aren't all that they're cracked up to be. Then I got to think, okay, what do I like about Slater surfing? And back then, he would take off and just do these long nose to the beach, bottom turn, and these massive calves. So I took off and, in my mind, tried to emulate. Remember how the baby saw the parent? So I just tried to copy. I went nose to the beach, had to lean, put the board on rail, and the thing just kicked into another gear, and it was amazing. Paddled back out, and I was like, wow, what just happened? Got so excited, caught the next wave, went mid-face again, and just defaulted to my excitement level of taking a real crap line, and the board went shit again. So I was like, whoa, the problem's not the board, the problem's me. All right.
We're always the problem. Always the problem.
So then I started to change some of my rockers to emulate what that feeling felt like. And I started making bad boards for my customers. I was like, this one didn't work. And I was like, oh, this guy surfs flat. He surfs mid-face. I need to understand my customer better. Because they came in and swore they surf top to bottom. They want to go more vertical. So I was like, sweet. I just got the thing. I just rode Kelly's board and it goes more rail to rail, top to bottom. This is what you want. I was like, no, they don't. They surf mid-face. They rush out onto the shoulder and they force turns in the wrong part and they want to bounce back. So I was then selling them the wrong board.
So what did you end up doing? Did you just keep on shaping them just flat boards, or did you try to encourage them to, try to surf more top to bottom?
I shaped them boards for my team riders. I do those boards, and then I changed the rockers for average guys. And whenever I was in the water, I would give free coaching to anybody that I saw riding my boards. And then it was almost like, oh, if you ride a Clayton board, you surf better. But all it was knowledge and education and free coaching so that they'd take better lines, that they'd do better turns. And that's also, again, what made me sort of segue into the coaching element, is because if I didn't coach them, they would say that I made them a bad board.
Got it. And is that some of what you're doing with the skate bowls and all that? Is that some of what you're doing in trying to educate people to not surf flat and to try to surf more top to bottom?
Okay, so we have controllables and uncontrollables. Basically, the wave we can't control. All we can do is just use pattern recognition, but we can control our bodies. So let me give you an idea. So if I told you touch your nose, this is proprioception, touch your ear, then I could take the pen and I can extend my proprioception to the pen and I can touch the mic. Easy. A lot of people don't know how to extend that proprioception into their boards. So the body's moving, the board's still going straight. So those movements aren't transmitting into the board and I can't see an outcome. Okay, so then I'm like, all right. So boxers will go and hit a boxing bag and they internally learn all the movements. But as soon as they're in the ring and the boxing bag starts hitting back, there's stress and then they don't know how to move. Okay, they've got to get comfortable with this and then go look at pattern recognition. When do I uppercut? When do I hook? When do I jab? Okay, so then if you just think about this, let's take that back into surfing. Let's get you onto a bowl, not on a street that's flat. Otherwise, every pro surfer would be riding foamies. But in a bowl that's 3D where you're freaking uncomfortable, right? And let's teach you how to move. It's not like a half pipe where you're doing airs and hitting coping. We're just learning how to bank at an angle where your board needs to be at an angle and not flat, right? Let's teach you compression and extension. Let's teach you how to move. Let's teach you front side, back side. Teach you how to create lift. Teach you how to do a roundhouse cutback. Do it with no speed, then do it with high speed. So you start learning your twists from your leans, okay? Once you've got all of that, then take that knowledge and go into the water and spend your surfs looking for the patterns where you could then use what you've learned, but go out there with the intention of having fun and try to reduce the frustration. let's save the frustration for the bowl where we can repeat patterns and we can look at pattern recognition and save the surfing for having fun. Because most times when I coached, I would stand on the beach for 2 hours. I'd tell someone what to do. They would go out there, they wouldn't be able to achieve it, and then they wouldn't want to come in until they have a good wave. So if they can't find a good wave, they're frustrated. I'm standing there pissed off because they haven't come in, and I want to tell them stuff. So I'm frustrated. And then you've got two frustrated people butting heads trying to improve surfing. So that's not a good environment. It's not fun. But I can go to a skate bowl where we lower the stakes, where they can do it again and again and again, and we can figure out how to move your body. I'm not teaching you how to surf. I'm teaching you the most efficient way for you to move your body where you can feel something, right? Then you go into the water. It's similar, but different, okay? I'm not going to say, oh, this is exactly the same as that. It's not. The same way if you rode a scooter, steering will be similar. If you go slow, you twist. If you go fast, you lean. If you ride a bicycle, if you go slow, you twist. If you go fast, you lean. If you ride a motorbike, if you go slow, you twist. If you go fast, you lean. They're similar, but they're all different. And that's kind of surf skate on a bowl versus waves. I'm not teaching you how to move. I'm not teaching you how to surf. I'm teaching you how to move, that you understand the difference between going fast and what type of turns I need to do, between going slow and what type of turns you want to do. I just want you to move efficiently and controlling the thing that you can control, which is your body and your mind, that you can enjoy your surfs better.
Yeah, that's interesting. And, just looking, it makes a lot of sense. And looking at, some of the stuff you guys have been doing in there, it seems a lot closer to surfing than a lot of the surf skate stuff you see. Like you'll see dudes on surf skates and they're just doing all sorts of wacky, wiggly stuff. And I'm just like, that you're actually going to train. We were talking about bad habits, like that is going to train some really bad habits into you.
See, if they come to my facility and they do that, just like, all right, just give me 10 push-ups. Why? Because you're wiggling. We don't surf flat waves.
Yeah.
So, I have to train the bad. I spend most of my time undoing bad habits than I do teaching correct habits.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I'm sure that's part of what you've been trying to do is figure out what movements in the skate bowl really translate to in the water, right? Because when I'm looking at the bowl, and I've never skated a bowl, so I don't really know exactly how it translates, but it looks similar, but there's still things that are different, than in when you're surfing in the water. So, but I guess what you're saying though is that you're not actually really just trying to perfectly replicate surfing. You're more just trying to teach people this movement, this sensation that they should be searching for. Is that what you're saying?
What I'm trying to do is I will go to the bowl and I'll make them uncomfortable. And then they'll all go internal. And I'm trying to get them to look at the line that they want to take. All right. And the way that I figured out, if you take a hose pipe and you flow water around the bowl, that's the line that you want to take, right? Because that's how water's flowing. So then when you go up, if you just stop the tail, water doesn't do that. So you kind of want to twist and you want to almost take Ethan Ewing turns in the bowl. And you told me the longer you hold that, the more flow you're going to get. So I'm like, okay, how can I make you flow in the bowl? Now, as someone goes into the bowl almost goes sideways and they're standing at an angle. So they feel like they're falling back. So then they want to correct themselves. And no, that's the wrong hand movement. If you feel like you're falling back, that's the thing that's going to make you come out of the turn with flow. So stop trying to correct the sensation of falling. If you twist with the sensation of falling, you'll catch yourself at the bottom. Okay, so now I got to take them from freeze to flight to fight to flowing through the turn. So that's a whole progress. And it's like, okay, once you've done that, now take the higher line. And what happens is they go through the whole process again. They go up there, they get scared, so they freeze. Then they want to rush it because they're uncomfortable. Then they try to force it because they're uncomfortable. And when they flow, it's like, right, you got it. Now go surf and take what you've learned into the water. Have fun with it. Play with it. Because we've worked through all the frustration in a controlled environment where we can get reps. Honestly, in the water, if you catch 10 waves and they're 10 seconds each, maybe you surf for a minute and a half. Imagine an hour of skateboarding. You frog leap like months, years ahead in terms of training your body what to do. So I'm seeing like fantastic results. And yeah, I do coach people on a Surfskate in a bowl. It doesn't sound great, but the results that I get are great. So I'm like, well, stuff it. If this is what it takes for me to train someone how to move, it's like the first fighters going, hey, hit this really soft boxing bag that doesn't hit back and you will become a better fighter. I'm like, oh, that sounds a bit like weird, but yet everyone does it. They even shadow box.
Right.
Yeah.
No, I think it makes sense. And I think as long as people aren't expecting, okay, there's going to be, what you're trying to do is perfectly replicate the surfing movement, then, then that's fine. You're trying to teach them this sensation, it sounds like. And I think that makes sense.
Through nurture and nature. Look, I'm glowing pink. You're a lot more dark skinned. That means you got different DNA to me, right? And then also what I've been through and how I've learned how to move. What feels good for me might not feel good for you. You got to figure out what that is for you. It will be similar, but it will be different. Okay, so I can't tell you what that is. You need to, that's your journey, that you figure that out. All I can do is I can point you in the right direction through reps. You will, because our mind uses so much energy, what it tries to do is tries to find the quickest, shortest way to do whatever it is. And it's almost like a no bullshit detector. Okay, so it's like if you hit a golf ball right, your mind go, oh, that's it. That's the shot that you want to play. And it's the same with being on the Surfskate bowl. If there's fear and anxiety, you'll struggle. But as soon as you've done it right, your mind goes, that's it. I call those light bulb moments. You get so many in a bowl. You get them like maybe months or years apart in the water. So if we can just give customers more light bulb moments that they can then take into the water, their surfing progression is going to be huge.
Yeah, that's epic. Yeah. I think that's great. I think, because I've experimented a little bit with surf skates, but I think what you're doing with it makes a lot of sense, where you're trying to, teach people this sensation. And I just, sometimes my friends will be like, dude, should I get a surf skate? Is this going to be a game changer for me? And I'm like, it could be, but it could also be really bad for your surfing sometimes. You just got to make sure you do it right, I think. And then obviously if they're working with you, then they're going to get the right training. And I think that's the most important thing, is that you're doing it correctly. Because I think if the average person just goes and buys a surf skate and they just like start, going around on it, it could mess up their surfing a little bit. But it's I think do it, but you just got to make sure you learn the proper way to do it, is what I would say, I guess.
I started trying to do some Muay Thai, kickboxing, to help me get fitter and stronger for surfing. And I was elbowing a bag, and I asked the trainer, like, should I go home and just like every day just do 100 of these in my bag? And he said, don't you dare, because if you do it wrong and you're hitting it 100 times a day, but you're only training me for an hour and doing 100 here, you're going to bring bad habits, and I'm going to spend all my time undoing a bad habit. So what you're doing with me is enough. Don't go home and pick up bad habits. So I was like, oh, that's, and the other problem is, he said, because I'm starting late, if I hit the bag at 100% and I do it wrong, I'm probably going to hurt myself. So I almost want to punch with less power, but punch more accurately and with better technique. And over time, I will develop strength, speed, and power. People jump on surf skates and they just want to get strength, speed, and power with no technique, and they pick up bad habits, and then they try to take all that bad stuff onto a wave. And all they've done is they've just almost self-sabotaged themselves. Yeah,
very true. All right, I got one last question for you before the call, just so I know, and we're over time, but we're just having a great conversation. But before the call, you were like, ask me the tough questions. That's what you asked me to do, Clayton. So I'm going to ask you one. Well, this is less me asking you. Yeah. This is something. Okay, so I do these posts. And I talk a lot about how when you're paddling for a wave, you want to paddle with your head down. And then I get all these people chiming in saying, no, you got to paddle with your head up. You got to do the Oreo. And I'm like, I don't know what the Oreo is, but, and I know that there are situations when you do want to paddle with your head up. But I guess I figured this should be the showdown, and you and I should just hash it out so that the followers on on there will have some resolution to it. So, what's your opinion on head up versus head down?
When you paddle out to the break, is your head up or down?
My head is up.
Okay, why?
Because I'm trying to. Well, I would. Let me put it like this: my head level depends on what I'm doing. Right? So obviously when I'm paddling out, usually it's actually at a medium height. So it needs to be high enough so I can see what's going on, so I can scan. But if I do too head up, then I'm going to sink the tail, and that's going to cause is going to cause my board to push, and it's going to be more strainful for my neck.
So when you push the tail down, right, and the wave is drawing the water up, okay?
Yeah.
So if your head's down, the board will do this, and then there's a chance that the swell will go under you. But if your head's up and your tail's down and the swell can't lift it up, it'll push you forwards.
Yeah.
Have you ever watched Beth Hamilton catch a wave?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I saw her in the water in Kauai, she in person. It was nuts. Yeah.
So she sits where the wave draws up.
Yeah.
And she pushes the tail down, and she lets the wave catch her. She doesn't catch the wave.
Right.
Now, if Bethany was in the wrong place, okay, so she's not sitting in the perfect place of the wave, you need to go chin down in order to maybe paddle your board over the peak to get into the right place. Okay, so it's all about tapping into the lift. If you in a part of the wave where you can't feel the lift, so you're ill-positioned, do whatever you can to try and get into the position where you can feel the lift. And that might be chin down, trying to pull yourself over that wave.
Yeah.
Okay. I would rather be an advocate of spend more time reading the patterns and sitting in the right place so that when you paddle into the wave, there's no stress. So you don't bounce into freeze, flight, and fight, but straight away your surfing starts to flow. So I want smarter surfers who can catch waves more effortlessly than someone who's making bad calls and having to stress paddle to get into position. And then that stress kind of follows them on that wave. They're surfing mid-face on the shoulder. So that's
well, it's interesting. I mean, so I guess my response to that is, I think the answer is a little bit more complex, right? So you can absolutely, cork into the wave by sinking your tail and getting in. And I used to do that a lot, right? But this is my own personal experience. And then also observing really good surfers is that I found myself when I did that, I would get into the habit of dropping into the wave late. Because when you're doing that, you're kind of taking off in a slightly more critical part of the wave, And what I've always observed is like the best surfers like catch the wave before it even breaks oftentimes. So you can't even like sit in that spot, So that's why I'm always like advocate of chin down, is because you should be paddling into the wave so early that it has barely even broken. And then you have to paddle harder and you have to paddle with your chin down and it's more energy. But then you get into the wave earlier and then you have more flow and speed because when you're up on your feet before, at the very top of the wave as opposed to in the middle of the wave. And I feel like it also reduces stress too, because when you do that kind of cork pop up, you have to pop up so quickly in such a critical situation that you end up mid-face and all that. I mean, obviously there's different levels of timing of it, like you can do it better. But basically my experience with it has been, as I've tried to catch the wave earlier and earlier and rely less on corking into the wave and more in paddling into the wave before it's broken, the easier things have been for me. So
I'm getting a frozen shoulder, so it's really hard for me to do a pop-up. I've also got, I don't know if you can see my hands. I've had operations on my hands.
Oh, no.
And if I look at this one, can you see my tendons are all weird?
Kind of, yeah.
See that? Okay. So, and I got tight hips, and this is all side effects from being diabetic. So I got a terrible pop-up, and I can't paddle fast. So I'm kind of like maybe a better version of Bethany. All right. I can use two hands, but I'm not strong.
Yeah.
So if I don't have to paddle for a wave, I'm like brilliant. And then I don't have to stress paddle, and all I got to do is just glide in. I've got a very slow pop-up, and I'm using the technique of body surfing, where when you body surf, all you got to do is just lean. The wave picks you up and it pulls you along. the earlier I can tap into that. So I don't paddle for a wave. I wait until I feel the wave, try to lift the tail up. Then I push the tail down, and if it can't go up, it'll push me forwards. Then I just lean into the wave, stand up, and I'm in the pocket. And great. Now feel it, top to bottom, top to bottom. So it is definitely a different mindset, but when you understand how powerful and how calming that can be, because before I even paddle, I'm tuning into the wave. When I stand up, I tune into the wave. And before I do any bottom turn, any move, I need to tune into the wave. And that brings me so deep into the moment. And then I start to enjoy my waves more. So,
yeah. Well,
like
I think it's just a different philosophy. I think it's a different philosophy. But I mean, I think that if you can pop into the wave like that and you can do it early, I think, that obviously works in a lot of situations, and I do it myself a lot of the time, Yeah. Now here's a question for you though. Just so when I do that technique, when I'm corking into the wave, I'll cork. But what happens is usually I will, this is just for the people that are chiming in the comments, chin up, chin up. When I do the Oreo, as you would call it, I still go chin down. Like what happens is I cork the board, and then as it pops up, I chin down to get down into the wave, and then I pop up. I don't do chin up the whole time. I don't know. I've just found that if I just focus on chin up all the time, I end up pulling. I feel like a lot of people end up pulling out of the wave, because of the whole fear instinct. Like if you go like this, you will, unless you're in that real critical part of the wave, you'll end up like pulling your board out of the wave, and I think it like might hold people back. But I don't know what's been your experience with coaching folks.
Do you follow Rob Case at all? He's a surf paddle coach.
Okay, yeah, I've seen some of his stuff.
So he's had a lot of science behind this, and basically, at a degree of about 20 to 30 degrees, your board will start to plane, and on a 2-foot wave, I think it will start planing at about 14 kilometers an hour. An Olympic swimmer at full pace can only swim at about 12 kilometers an hour before gassing out. So it's virtually impossible to paddle at the speed of a wave because it's 2 foot, right? But at a 20 to 30 degree angle, you can start slipping and start accelerating far quicker. So what I want to do is, by leaning back, think of an airplane taking off. My board, if it's in water, it's pushing water. So the earlier I can start planing, all right, so I want to assist the planing. So I start arching my back, and then the higher my head is, the easier it is for me to stand. So there is a lot of kind of science, and there's a lot of, what do you want to call it? There's a lot of thought and theory that's all gone into this. It's not just like, oh, suck your thumb.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah. Right.
You have to be in the right part of the wave. You have to be calm. You have to know how to do it. And if one of those things is not right, you will miss waves. You will go over the falls. You will get stuck behind. But when you know how to do it, it's so easy to catch waves. That for an old diabetic like me in my 50s with a dodgy shoulder, tight hips and sore hands, I do not struggle to catch waves. And if I can do this for as long as I can, for the next 10, 15 years, whatever, however long I've got left in my diabetic years of surfing, the happier I am.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we disagree. I mean, I just did a piece about like doing the cork takeoff, and, so I'm glad we had this conversation so that all the people that were in my comments can finally listen to this and get a perspective. I think it's just like, how you want to approach the waves. So,
exactly.
All right.
Cool.
Anything else? Let's see. I think I covered pretty much all I set out to cover. It was a pleasure. Are there any shout outs that you wanted to make? Any announcements or anything exciting you got going on?
I think I'm good. I'm actually so late for my next appointment, so I'm going to have to jump off and rush out and do some coaching.
Okay. All right. Well, appreciate you having you on, and thanks for joining.
Cool. Thanks, man. Love chatting. Love your God bless Instagram. I've been following it for ages, so enjoy the work that you're doing, and thanks for having me on your show. And I really appreciate it. Thanks for listening to all my craziness that's going on in my head. And yeah, good chatting. So thank you.
All right, cool. Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.